Hello and welcome to another episode of Access Granted. I'm here with Paul. No, not Paul, Rebecca, and Nick.
Great to be here.
I'll do that again. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Access Granted. I'm here with Nick and Rebecca as usual, and we are here to talk about the latest news and disability again. So welcome guys. It's good to see you as usual.
Great to see you, Blake. Great to see you, Rebecca.
Likewise.
So since the last time we spoke, there's been a lot going on. So we've had what do we want to touch on first? We had the announcement a couple of days ago that the task force is going to be extended by at least another year, and we had the boarding bill that came in, the changes around that. So we would like to start. Any preference?
Where you go, Blake? You kick it off, and we'll jump.
So let's start with the task force. So Louise announced recently that the task force will be extended by another year at least. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Just initial reaction.
Where you go, Rebecca? You kick it off. I'm happy to go, but you should. Yeah.
I'm not surprised. Anyone who's been involved in the disability sector the last few years will know that there's a lot of messiness in the sector, and there's like different things that have been trialled over the years. And this minister has indicated she wants a lot more consistency, and she wants a lot more structure, and she wants a lot more. Probably moving towards a more one-size-fits-all approach, but I don't think she'll do that exactly. But it's certainly, it's a sector that has been very scrappy and very messy, and nobody has wanted to really dig into that. So I'm not surprised. The proof is in the pudding. Like, it really depends on what they come back with, how they engage, that sort of thing.
For me, it's like I feel like by them extending it by at least another year, that the whole roadshow was worthless. Do you get that impression, Nick? I'm interested to get because you went with me to that one.
Yeah, I think for me there have been some real winners out of this. I think the announcement around the ending of the funding freeze shows that our service organisations will come away with some certainty. So around the board tables and around the leadership groups of our service organisations, they will certainly feel some certainty at this point in time. So at that level of the disability sector, that's certainly positive from that at that level of the sector. So winning at that level, but at the level of our disability community, families, disabled people, and whānau, the extension of this process for 12 months, that's certainly not good. That's never good, because that's ultimately more uncertainty, and that's more of waiting to find out what this means for people in everyday practice, in terms of their everyday reality. So that's never good. We were given a very strong message during the roadshow that you and I attended, Blake, that there wasn't going to be a lot of money coming over the hill to save people. So I think a further extension is possibly going to be not equally not good. So for me, I see it on two levels. One, our organisations have been given certainty, but our community has been given a level of uncertainty. So I think that's possibly where we sit at the moment.
I just want to go to your point about the supposed ending of the funding freeze, Nick, because I'll believe it when I see it, to be honest, because like they say it's ending right, they say they're gonna unfreeze this and unfreeze that, but I have a feeling that they'll just cut something else. So we'll never be out of this vicious cycle of, even if they unfreeze a couple of things, you know, other things will be compromised. I don't know if Rebecca's got a comment on that.
Harking back to our last conversation where I said that this budget had money in it for particular pain points where people had been protesting and agitating and organising.
Yeah.
And the disability sector has shown that they not only are capable of organising, but that they will make a lot of noise, that they won't stop making noise, and that they have the sympathetic ear of a number of journalists within mainstream media. And it's not always perfect, of course, but I think it's been made very clear to this government that if they don't meet the needs of disabled people and families, we will be out on the streets protesting, and we won't stop being out on the streets protesting until we're supported to be able to live ordinary lives.
Yeah.
I think the real key messaging here is that we know in the sector that we are underfunded. And we have a lot of sympathy out there in terms of mainstream. Like, people get that we're underfunded. They know that a lot of the care work we do isn't paid. We know that disabled people aren't actually supported the way they need to be. So this government is being very careful to make sure they're not giving us a reason to protest.
Yeah. So the thing is, for me, I'll believe the end of funding freeze when I see it, because like, even if they stop one thing, they might stop something else, so they can't. I think the word end of funding freeze is a bit of a cop out from the minister and her people, for me. So yeah, for me it'll be a case of believe it when I see it.
Well, I'll just put the end of the funding freeze was.
Your microphone's gone again.
Is that better?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll just put this one out there. The end of the funding freeze was announced in the budget, so that there was money put aside for it. But this budget has been pretty clear around there is money being taken from one area and put into another because of the limited size of the operating allowance.
Yeah.
So in order to put new money into one area, the government is having to take money from a different area.
Yeah.
So we could potentially see a situation where money is being taken from a different part of the budget in order to put it into the funding freeze to stop the funding freeze. So we could potentially see a situation where 12 months down the track, the size of the budget allocation that's given to, say, for example, expanding DSS or allocating funding to the DSS is smaller than it potentially would have been because money has already been put aside to stop the funding freeze. So because that fits the profile that we've already just spoken about around money being taken from one area to put into another area. So what I'm trying to put forward here is that it's not new money that we're talking about here. It's just money that's being taken from one area and put into a different area. So that also fits the discussion that we had during the engagement, where it was made pretty clear that there's no new money coming over the hill. So we may see a situation in 12 months where we find out that there is much less money coming into DSS funding over the short to medium term.
Yeah, that's my concern too, because no matter what area you take it out of, the other areas are still going to struggle. So it's never going to be a perfect thing. One other thing that came out recently was the new bill for amendment for the temporary accommodation supplement thing, where you're not allowed, supposedly, not allowed borders anymore. that could be a real problem for our community. And I said this on a previous podcast with Priyanka that I worry that some of our community are going to end up homeless because in some cases they won't be allowed caregivers in their home with them. So I have some real concerns there. Have you guys got any comments on that one?
I mean, I put out a Substack around that exact issue where a parent was saying, I've just worked out what it means for me. And, oh no, I now need to find an extra $300 a week because I can't, because of those complexities and nuances. And I'm sure they're not the only person in that scenario where you take in a boarder to offset some of your costs. I don't think that scenario has really been thought through because it hasn't been thought through from a disability perspective. It's been thought through from a finance budgetary MSD perspective of how can we claw back some money in order to make this budget work.
Go
Yeah,
on.
no, I tend to agree. I mean, I think a lot of time, well, many times we make policy choices, and the the disability lens is almost never put on it, or it's put on as an afterthought when you see it in the regulatory impact statement, and the words "no impact on the disability community" is what you find, and what that means is that there has been no analysis done on in terms of how it will impact disabled people. So they just put that little rider on there to say that there will be no impact on disabled people. But picking up this example, which is a really good example, and there are so many different ways to look at it, particularly in the caring situation where family members or individuals may wish to bring someone into their living situation in order to help them, be more independent and live their own life, and also to make their life just that little bit easier by bringing in a little bit more income. And I just think that's never even been concepted in the policy development phase. So I think that will ultimately have a negative impact on disabled people's lives.
Does this?
I think it's
Sorry.
important to note too that these are not people who can find additional paid employment.
Yeah.
So there is not extremely high paid employment options available, but also time-wise, a lot of the time is already spent in terms of either providing care duties or as managing everyday life. So there's not the opportunity to go out and find a really well-paid 10, 20, 30-hour-a-week job to offset this cost. It's completely unrealistic. And so in that situation, people are being very creative, they're being very thoughtful, they're looking at how can we provide an additional income in order to pay the mortgage, to pay the rent, and boarding has been actually a very sensible option. And it helps with homelessness because it helps the border too.
Nick,
I mean, one of the things, just
Sorry.
to take this one a little bit further, one of the things that I've been thinking about quite a lot was a study that was done a long time ago now. It was done in around about 2010, which talked about the cost of disability. And it actually started to break down what the cost of disability was based upon different impairment groups. And it was done here in New Zealand. And it demonstrated that there was a cost of living with a disability. And it made the argument that our benefit system needed to build into its calculation that cost of disability. At the moment, if you look at the child disability allowance and the disability allowance, that just doesn't even get anywhere near close to encompassing that cost of disability. So I think we need to relook at our disability benefits in terms of building in that cost of disability, so that we don't have to look at examples like the one that we're talking about just right now, where people have to bring in boarders into their own lives in order to recoup part of that cost around care, that they can actually have that appropriate income support in order to live their very good life.
And it goes back to what I said a few weeks ago around for example, we can use a Green Party calculator, right, from their alternative budget. They are proposing, well, for me, it came up over $600 a week. So that's if we invest in disability through multiple parties, not just Green or Labour or whatever, we can be on some real good support, and that's what we need, a bipartisan approach on it. Would you agree with that, Nick? Like taking the Green Party's calculator as a example, maybe?
Well, I haven't looked at that Green Party calculator, but what I would certainly agree with is that if we start to move those costs away from disabled people and start to load the investment around disabled people in terms of creating a good life around disabled people and their families. It gives choices. It gives opportunity to maybe participate in the community, or maybe look for a job if that's what the person wants to do. Some people may not want to do that, and that's completely fine. And we should accept that, and we should support people to live a good and a dignified life if that's what they choose to do. But we have to recognise that there are significant costs that come with living with being a disabled person, and we have to move those costs away. It's part of what sits with removing the barriers that we have in our society. We have a very disabling society, and we have to start looking at removing those barriers in order to enable our disability community to live with dignity and to live their very best life.
One other thing that I found disturbing about this budget since the last time we spoke together is the fact that Louise is still pushing this narrative that, oh, if you can work, you should work, even if you're disabled. Oh, and if you're not gonna follow my orders, we're gonna basically make you prove that you have a disability every year. I find that absolutely repulsive.
It's also, I would also add, it's illegal because it's already in the legislation that certain disabilities don't have to prove that they're disabled every year. If you're legally blind, you don't have to engage in any of the work readiness options at all. Like, it is carved out as a specific exception that you do not have to, and you are not ever subjected to sanctions.
So from what
There are some carve-outs there. I assume she's looking at people who are on the job seekers as opposed to supported living payment.
No, it now, from my understanding, it now includes supported living. So
The stuff I've seen about supported living is that it's very much a watered down version of what people on job seekers, health and disability are expected to do.
But even so, Rebecca, people should not have to prove if they've got a permanent disability. They should not have to continue to prove it constantly. Yes, it's one.
I thought the legislation had been changed so that you didn't. If you had a permanent disabling condition, you didn't have to constantly prove it.
From what I understand, they've cut that out again. So this is what this new bill has reversed. But either way, it's not good that, she's basically sort of saying, demanding that we work, right, if we can work, and basically saying if we don't work, then you have to prove if you've got disabilities. That's basically really not cool. Like, personally, when I heard that, and searched through the footage in the house, it made me feel degraded as a disabled person. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Nate.
Yeah, I think I take my own personal experience. I mean, it took me until I was 42 in order to get a full-time job. That was my personal goal. It's not every disabled person's personal goal in order to find full-time job, because that it may not suit their own personal circumstances, their impairment, because not everyone is. It just doesn't work for everybody. But we shouldn't be feeling pressure. We shouldn't be getting lectured at. We shouldn't be getting told by or made it contingent upon receiving income support that we that a job is the highest form of result. Because for many disabled people, because of the nature of their impairments, work is just not an appropriate outcome for them. For some disabled people, they may wish to seek some form of employment, but for some, it's just not an appropriate outcome for them. For some, it may be community participation, it may be volunteering, it may be some form of community participation. But to set up the way that you access income support through participation in work is just completely degrading and totally destroying of your value and your view of self. So for me, I cannot support that. I cannot get behind that. I think we need to totally relook at how we do that, particularly for people with long-term health conditions and disabilities that are permanent. And we also need to look at how we do that for people with disabilities that are temporary and that vary with the nature of those disabilities. Having said that, though, there are, I mean, many disabled people I talk to tell me that they want to work, that's a goal for them, and that's great, and that's fine, and we should support them and back them to go and achieve that goal. But many others say that work doesn't work for them. That it's not something that they want to get involved in, and we should also support them as well. We should support them with good income support and good community support as well.
When I first heard Louis talk about that, it reminded me of somebody like at a school principal saying, "If you don't do what you're told, I'm going to punish you," or something. That's what it reminded me of. Finally, I want to touch on the learning support stuff that came out in the budget with you, Nick, because you weren't here during our last conversation. You were recently joining our friends over at Locked Out, where you talked a lot about this and other things. Have you had any of your concerns melted away since you've last spoken to Craig on Locked Out about the learning support and bits and pieces around that when you spoke to him?
I think probably learning support for me has become more concerning at the moment. I think where we got to with learning support is that we it's undoubted that there was a significant budget allocation going into learning support. No one can doubt that. But we come back to the position that we were just discussing a few minutes ago, that this is a budget allocation that was taken from somewhere in order to plug into learning support. And that means that something was given up in order to give it to learning support. And in this case, it was resource teachers of Māori. And I think that is really concerning. The other thing that was given up was kahui ako, and I think that's really concerning because there was some really good things that were being done through the kahui ako program, particularly around creating opportunities to build leadership around things like learning support and how to be good leaders for our principals, around how to develop leadership in the learning support space. So I asked myself the question, is it is it good to sacrifice all those good things that were working to fund a really great program for learning support? And there will be parents out there in the community that say, yeah, absolutely. I back my child. I need my child to get the right resources around them in order to succeed. And I'm not going to argue against that because, I know the value that the right resources around a child can deliver. But if we take it back a level and if we look at the system as a whole, which is what many advocates in the teaching and learning support community do, ultimately what this has done is it has undermined our ability to lift everyone up. And I think what we really need to do is we need to have systemic change of our system, and we need to totally relook at how we are delivering learning support within our system. So this is a good first step on one level, but we've got so much more that we need to do. We need to guarantee that our kids can get into school because at the moment there's no guarantee that a young disabled child can enter their local school. That's not guaranteed. We need to make sure that our initial teacher education is set up for giving our teachers the education they need. So there are so many different things that we need to get doing. So yeah, I would say at the moment I'm probably skeptical around how this will deliver the results that we need. But I do recognise that there will be many, many parents out there that will be supportive of this.
There are two comments that I'll make here, and I'll let you have any after that if you want, Rebecca. The thing that really gets me about this is it's obvious Minister Erica Stanford is passionate about learning support. We can't deny that. However, it can't come at the expense of a policy that seems to have another lot of racist undertones at the back of it. So yes, it's great that you're putting effort into learning support, but it shouldn't come at the expense of another racist undertone to your policy by removing some of the Maori implications. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Rebecca, or something else, but yeah, that's one.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a number of cuts to Māori education. Quite a number of cuts, indeed. I mean, if you look at it overall in the spin-off, they were saying, there's certainly some wins, but overall, it's not great. 31.6 million in cuts to Māori education. They've disestablished the Whare Kura Expert Teachers Program, as well as the Āti Māori program that Nick mentioned before. And they've reprioritised 36.1 million from kaupapa Māori and Māori medium education into mainstream. So they're certainly taking money from Māori in order to fund learning support, which I don't think any of us thinks a good idea. What I find really interesting is, as I said earlier, is that this is a pain point. This is a point where parents are actually starting to get ready, and they've been very consistent and supported by teachers that there is not the funding, there is not the support for disabled learners. And yay, more money, but it's not a joined up system. There's not a consistency in it. There's not a commitment to early intervention and ensuring that early intervention flows through into funding during the schooling years from primary school through to intermediate and secondary school. It's still very bitsy, and it's just, here's some extra money for this pot because we know this pot is a particular pain point for families, so we're going to alleviate that so we don't have you protesting out in the street and emailing me and giving me a hard time about it. And that approach worries me because it's not really setting up our children, it's not really setting up our families to live a good life, to live an independent life, to live a dignified, respected life.
So in closing then, one more question. one more question for the both of you. Do you think Minister Stanford has listened to the concerns that the community has? In short, who wants to start?
I think she's listened to the concerns of the people she has talked to. And I'll leave you to make inferences from that.
Go on, Nick.
Yeah. What I would say to that is that I would agree that because through my work at Education for All, we have met with the minister on one occasion, and I took away the impression that the minister is again very, very passionate about inclusive education, and is listening to a particular how do I word this? Is listening, but yeah. One thing I would say though around this is that we have a real problem in this country with residential special schools, and we have 5 of them at the moment. And my challenge to our not just our education ministry, but to our broader community is that we need to stop. We need to close our residential special schools because our Royal Commission has told us that we have to close them. The United Nations has told us that we have to close them, and it's probably also my challenge to our minister, who's also the minister for the Royal Commission response, that we have to close them. So I'd say to answer your question, Blake, is the minister listening? I would say to the minister that go out and talk to the community and talk to a broader representation of the community around this issue, because if we're going to have success in inclusive education, then we really have to create opportunities for all of our young rangatahi and our konga to be able to learn in an environment that's open and free and in mainstream settings. So that would be what I'd say around that.
Yeah, what I would finish.
We're going to talk about that just slightly, because for many parents, residential specialist schools are the only respite they get. And part of the reason why they're popular with parents is parents don't have respite. And so, and their child isn't attending mainstream school in any meaningful way. And the residential specialist schools offer a space for the parent and the child to breathe and be included. And yes, I agree absolutely with what the UN has said and that approach. But before we get there, we need to push our mainstream schools to do better, because they are excluding our students. And we need to make sure that we are offering parents and families adequate respite and adequate support, because that is why a lot of parents are choosing residential specialist schools, because they're just desperate for a break. And a lot of parents don't understand or realise that the outcomes for their child if they go to a residential specialist school aren't great. When you look at the outcomes long term, when you look at the life outcomes long term, they are not particularly great for the disabled person. But parents don't know this. Nobody tells them this. We don't have this conversation. And all the parent can see is someone is willing to take my child and work with them, and they're going to go to school and they're going to get an education, which they're not currently getting, and I'm going to have space to breathe. And we have to find a way to do that doesn't include residential specialist services.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah.
Sorry. My 2 comments would be that, to finish off, that if we need to get rid of specialist schools, we need to fight to get community services back to the level that they were for respite. Otherwise, community schools, residential schools are our only best option for those younger generation. And what I would say in regards to the learning support is, I think Minister Stanford is doing her best with the money that she has. I'm going to support her on this. I actually applaud her for using the money that she has to do the best that she can. And I'll leave it at that. So thank you for joining me once again, and we'll see you on the next one.